you can interrupt at any time, especially with such a small group. Um, so as Ricardo said, my name is Christopher Ramos. I'm a physician at Grady. I'm employed through Emory University, and I'm a vascular surgeon. I have no disclosures. I'll quickly just go through my history and how where I grew up, where I went to high school in Los Fresnos, and which is the southern tip of Texas, and then I went to University of Colorado for undergraduate, followed by University of Colorado for School of Medicine. Then I came over to Georgia and did my fellowship at Emory University, and I'll talk a little bit about what it takes to do all those different levels of training. And then the most important part of my life, La Familia Ramos, that we've grown in numbers over the last few years. So my mother is her name's Eva. She was born in central Mexico in San Luis Potosí, and she emigrated to South Texas at the age of 14. She left her family to go make money. She had 12 other siblings, and it was tough. She was the third oldest, so it was kind of her responsibility to help support the family. She did a lot of odd jobs. She worked in agriculture as most Mexican immigrants do, and eventually she became a waitress and a seamstress. She had my sister in 1977. She's my half sister, but I consider her my sister. And she's 6 years older than me. There's a picture of my mom. I think she was in her 20s. These are obviously all pictures that I had to, find through the archives of Facebook and family posts and stuff. So this is a picture of me and a bunch of my cousins, not all of them, but a bunch of my cousins in San Luis Potosí in El Rancho where my grandparents lived. You can see, I think that's one of my uncles there on the left, and you can see the chickens running around the background. And I had despite being a very humble beginnings, I never felt like I was missing anything early on, but obviously as I grew older, I did realize that there were things that were lacking financially. We I learned my first language was Spanish, and my mom only spoke Spanish, so I lived in an area that was about 99% Hispanic, Mexican, Latino. And my pre-K, I was only a Spanish speaking pre-K. That was a mile away in South Texas. And I guess the teachers thought that I was maybe a little advanced and paid a little more attention, or didn't have to pay attention, but was still grasping what they were talking about. So they recommended me to test into the gifted and talented program, and I did. And for kindergarten, my mom thought it was a good idea for me to go, and I'm glad she did that because they transferred me to a different school that was 8 miles away, and I had to take a bus at kindergarten and learn English there. I had to learn English. I was kind of forced into it, and I really think that helped me because otherwise I probably would have used Spanish as my primary language. And as time went on, it became evident that obviously you have to speak English to be in this country and work your way up to be a professional. So this is a picture of my kindergarten class, and like I said, South Texas, 99% Hispanic. And you can tell that at least half of my kindergarten class is Caucasian, which is interesting because, there is some form of, differences in education when, you're in a Spanish speaking only versus a English speaking only class. And, I'm glad that we made the sacrifices for me to do that, even though I was taking the bus by myself in kindergarten. I actually do remember when I was my first day going to kindergarten, my mom was working, she couldn't take me, so I got put in a bus, and eventually made it to the school that I needed to be at. And but that's that, those are all just the hardships that we had to go through. So I moved about 5 times between elementary and high school. My mom had some, some chronic lung disease from working at Hager, a Slack company, and inhaling all the debris in the air, and she had to stop that job. And at some point we lost the house that we were living in because she couldn't keep up with the mortgage, and we were pretty close to homelessness at different points in our life. But somehow she always persevered and she made things work. And I saw early on all the sacrifices that she had to make just to put food on the table. But unfortunately, my sister, she was top 5% in her high school class heading into her senior year, but then in her senior year, she made some, poor decisions and was near dropping out. And I saw how much that hurt my mom, and I figured that I did not want to do that to her. I wanted to do better. I wanted to help my mom. I wanted to make our family stronger and show that my mom had actually done a great job raising us. So in high school, I worked hard, right? And this is where it all starts for everyone. Is I think you really need to start working hard in high school and really, make the effort to join the different clubs and stuff. So, I was part of the student council. I ran cross country track, and the main sport was football. And towards my junior year, I was one of the captains of the football team. And in the spring, I would do powerlifting. I worked hard and became a national champion. And ultimately, I graduated third in my class. I graduated behind two white girls that were in my class. So again, I worked hard. Became, joined all these clubs and sports, and was able to show my way that I was a strong candidate. Based on my GPA and extracurricular activities, to be able to be successful in college. So this is a picture of my mom here on the left, and my abuelita Panchita, who's now passed away. This is a picture of me and my cousin in my bedroom with all the plaques and ribbons in the back from all the sports that I participated. And this is a picture of me in our football uniform with the our five senior captains that year. And there here on the right, there's a picture of our high school trophy display where there's still a picture of me, for my powerlifting accomplishments. Um, so during my senior year, junior year into senior, I went to my high school counselor and I asked her, what can I do to make money quick for my family? I need to get a degree so I can start making money and help my mom out, buy her a house because, we're not in a good situation. And she pulled out this chart, and it showed mostly, it was like business degree, but only about 30% of people make good money if they got an MBA and things. And I didn't feel like I had enough time to go get an MBA. So after that, it was a bunch of engineering degrees. And I think the third one was chemical engineering. And I was like, well, I'm good at chemistry and I'm good at math. So I'm just going to go get a chemical engineering degree, not knowing anything what that meant. I just needed to figure out a way to make money for my family. Um, so I applied that year for a bunch of scholarships. I applied for the Gates Millennium Foundation scholarship, which is through Bill and Melinda Gates, and I graciously was granted that scholarship, and that really set everything, in a different perspective at that point. That covered tuition and fees for anywhere I wanted to go. Um, I ended up going to University of Colorado Boulder, and I majored in chemical engineering. I did minor in Spanish, and the only reason I minored in Spanish was so that I can keep taking summer classes, so I can keep getting the stipend, so I can keep living in Boulder and keep doing research. So I focused a lot on this in the summertime doing research in proteomics, and I got a couple papers published, and that started kind of opening the thought that wow, after my first freshman and sophomore year, I was doing pretty good. I had a good GPA in chemical engineering, which is a pretty tough degree to have, and I started, getting the itch. Like, well, I told my abuelita Panchita a long time ago that I was gonna make her better. By then, she had died, but I had said I was gonna help her heal her when I was like 6, 7, 8, and I never did. And I was like, well, let's see what this medical school thing was. So I started looking at the classes I was taking. Fortunately, a lot of them in chemical engineering did match up with some of the pre-med track And I just started taking all the other pre-med requirements, and I took my MCAT and I did okay. And at that point, I had a solid GPA, had a tough degree. I had some research background, and I'm not gonna sell it short. I'm Latino and I come from a disadvantaged background, so all of that together showed that I had, I come from an underrepresented background, but I with what I had, I made it work and I worked hard, and I thrived. And I was pretty competitive for medical school. I really lucked out. But obviously it came from a lot of hard work, and the reason I lucked out is because I didn't have too much mentorship. I just kind of stumbled upon it, and that's why I think groups like this are really important. You got to hear other people's stories so you can kind of start thinking about how to accomplish things, and try to find mentors early on so that you can hear how other people struggled, other people's mistakes, or other people's successes, so people can learn from those. So I got into medical school. I got into a few medical schools, but I decided I wanted to stay at Colorado because I loved Colorado. I loved the outdoors scene, and I was ready to go. And then I was filling out all this paperwork, and then the financial stuff came up, and they said, "Okay, who's going to co-sign your out of state tuition loans?" And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you need someone with good credit to co-sign your loans. And my mom did not have any credit. I mean, we were nearly homeless at some point. And so I had to defer my admission, right? I just couldn't afford it. And I told him, sorry, I can't I cannot pay your tuition. I can, um, what can you do for me? And fortunately, they deferred my admission for a year. I got my in-state tuition in Colorado, and I went and worked in the oil industry for a year. I had done a previous internship uh, doing some, petroleum engineering. So I figured, yeah, go make a bunch of money for a year, and then come back. And I did. I was able to pay off a couple credit cards, pay off my car loan, and then I was ready to go to medical school. So in 2006, I started at the University of Colorado, Denver in medical school. It was really hard work. I really struggled with memorization. I was an engineer, and you had to do things, not memorize things. I was a doer, not a memorizer. So I struggled the first couple of years, but by the third year, when we did our medical rotations, I loved it. Actually doing stuff, taking care of patients, and then came my surgical rotations, and I love that the most. So I decided, I wanted to be a surgeon. And here's my mom at my one of the proudest days of my life. My mom holding my school of medicine degree. That's the first time that she actually saw what I was doing. I had been gone for 4 years undergrad, 1 year working, and then 4 years of medical school. I'd been gone from home for 9 years, and she'd never come to see what I was doing. And when she came to my medical school, like she didn't come to my undergraduate graduation because we were broke. But when she came to my medical school graduation, she's like, "Ah, mijo, sí estabas haciendo algo." So it was funny that she finally realized, like, wow, you haven't just been slacking off for 9 years. You've actually been putting some hard work. So that was great. And these are my two nieces and nephew from my half sister that came to my graduation too. So in 2010, applied to residencies. I actually initially did not match into a residency, so I stayed and did my first year internship at University of Colorado. Again, this was another kind of struggle in my career, um, and I had to actually work harder than my co-residents to get a permanent position as a categorical resident. And so I did my 1 year internship. I did a second year preliminary year, and then I had to work. I did 1 year in the research in the trauma research lab, and I'm glad I did that because that actually helped me get some publications and made me a better applicant when I started applying for fellowships. And then I completed my general surgery residency, and during that time, in 2011, I also met the love of my life, my wife Courtney, and she worked in the ICU at one of the trauma hospitals that I worked at, and she was an MA, and she was also working on her education. And when I first met her, I told her that I had to make my job the top priority in order for to be able to provide for us as a family as our relationship matured, and we realized that we're going to be together. But even it wasn't all hard work, right? We still had a good time. There's a picture of Courtney and I at our favorite fishing spot in Grand Lake, and then a couple of pictures where wearing our favorite sports teams, the Colorado Avalanche, and for me, the University of Colorado Buffaloes. So then we married in 2015, and there's a just married picture that I love. This is in Granby Ranch, coming down from one of the ski lifts. We were supposed to get married at the top of the mountain, but there were lightning storms that day, so unfortunately we had to go up and down and such. And then in 2016, I graduated residency. In 2014, going into 2015, I had actually matched into my fellowship. This is my graduating class. My general surgery residents. They're all around the country at this point. But these are people that I sweat and bled with, taking care of patients for 6 years. I matched at a fellowship in vascular surgery at Emory, and it was a 2-year fellowship. And the plan was for me to come to Atlanta and learn how they did things in Atlanta, and bring some of that back to Denver, because the plan was for me to go back and work at Denver Health, which is the level 1 trauma center. And when I got here, I realized that Grady is a makes Denver Health look like a Hodon Country Hospital, and I really wanted to work at Grady. So eventually, I graduated from my fellowship, and during my fellowship, we did have our daughter Nola. And when we had her, that changed everything, because when my first year fellowship, it was like, okay, you want to see, like, do all these cases, and of course I did. And the more cases I did, the better surgeon I became. But when I had my daughter, everything changed. So fortunately, I had her April of 2018, which was 2 months before my fellowship ended. So I was able to shift my priorities to Nola and my family, and it didn't affect my training too much. There's a picture of Nola, just a few weeks old, and this is Nola and I being goofballs. Um, in 2018, I finished my fellowship and I became an associate professor in vascular surgery. The first year that I worked at Emory, I was at Emory and VA for 1 year, but eventually I got switched over to Grady Memorial Hospital, which is now the busiest level 1 trauma center in the country. Um, Grady is a very special place. It caters to the underserved and uninsured, undocumented. It's a really great place to work at. There's actually a picture of my first gift that I got from one of my partners when I walked into my office. When I was my first day on the job, I walked into my office and I go sit on my computer, and I look up and there's this Coke, and my partner Guillermo Escobar had left a little note there. So in 2020, I finally accomplished the dream. My dream was to build my mom a house, and it took a long time. It took a really long time, but I was eventually able to do it. And then, with the help of my wife and such, acting as my financial counselor. And then 2021, we had our son Matias, and this is me holding our son, and Nola, and Eva, my mom, holding Matias. And I put a lot of work into my career, and I put even more work having a happy family. But fortunately, I just got word that I am getting promoted to assistant professor, and obviously that's come with a lot of sacrifices, including meetings at times like this, phone calls at times like this, late nights, in the operating room and such, and a lot of sacrifice. But fortunately, I have a supporting wife and family that have allowed me to do this. So it's not all just vascular surgery that we do. Vascular surgery is not all of my life. That last thing was a common femoral repair. There's a popliteal repair, both injuries and trauma. I've prioritized my life in education and research to improve patient outcomes, and operating on patients, treating patients. But as I've grown, I've learned that the most important thing is mi familia, right? If I can't take care of mi familia, I'm not in a good place, mentally and physically. So I've learned that my family is my top priority, and obviously my priorities have shifted as my career has changed. And what I've learned is that you do need to be a little selfish early on in your career in order to be able to advance yourself and promote yourself. But eventually, you need to come back and shift your priorities back towards your family. This is a picture of my wife and I and the kids at their first University of Colorado football game. Um, and it was one of the best days, other than Matias having some ear infections that day, because I love going to Colorado football games. I guess at this point, I'm open to any questions from anyone. We might have someone come in and say hi, but I guess that was the wife turning on the light. Um, any questions?
Hey, my name's Mateo. Um, Thank you for the talk. I was wondering how you decided on your what you wanted to like specialize in.
Yeah, so in medical school, your first 2 years are usually mainly didactics, mainly classroom, and then you'll do some rotations in like primary care, and then your third year you'll do rotations in your clerkships. So that includes medicine rotations, surgery rotations, family medicine, internal medicine, emergency medicine, a lot of rotations, and you get a taste of what you want to do. And my first rotation was actually in obst gynecology oncology. So I was with this gynecologist taking out these huge fibroid tumors in the abdomen, and I was like, man, this is awesome. Then I did my obstetrics rotation part of it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. But then came, my surgical rotation in my third year, and that was just awesome. Like, and I did a little bit of trauma, I did a little bit of surgical oncology. Um, I didn't not do vascular then. I actually didn't rotate on vascular until I was an intern. And back then, when I was an intern, I didn't think I still had imposter syndrome. I didn't think that I was still meant to be there, especially since I hadn't matched into a categorical position. But by my fourth year, I was felt pretty skilled, and my mentor at the trauma hospital, Denver Health, that was a vascular surgeon. And he's like, "Hey, man, you can sew." At that point, I want to be a vascular surgeon. So he's like, "Well, why do you want to be a vascular surgeon and do non-operative trauma? Why not just be the vascular surgeon at a busy trauma hospital and get called in for all the big bad trauma?" And that flicked a light, like, yeah, actually that's what I loved. I loved the vascular repairs. I loved helping out with that. I loved revascularizing people when they didn't have blood flow. And I love the endovascular part of things too, which is wires, catheters, balloons, stents. So it was really late in my surgical career, in my fourth year residency, that I realized that I want to do vascular surgery. But I actually realized that 2 months before the applications were due. So it was very late. So obviously, once you start doing your surgical rotations, you figure out what you want to do. But I was gun ho and set on being a trauma surgeon until I had that rotation. And now I still do vascular trauma. That's what I do. That's about almost 30% of my job is vascular trauma being at Grady. So I have that, career. I had the career goal and I've achieved it. And not just that, I also get to help the underserved, people that are undocumented, people that come in with really bad wounds in their feet from bad diabetes and stuff. So I kind of help with all that too.
That adds a lot of perspective. Thank you.
Of course.
So I did have one question. You kind of already touched on it a little bit, but how did you overcome that imposter syndrome, or how did you stop that from discouraging you to greater lengths and ambition?
Yeah. It's not until the last year that I've really realized that I belong. Um, I feel like I've had to outwork everyone to get to where I am. I've had to sacrifice a lot to get to where I am. Um, I think it has a lot to do with my support system, right? And my wife, and her being in healthcare too. Um, my wife always telling me that I belong. Um, I feel that she's in healthcare too. She's a nurse. She's an ICU nurse, but stays home with her kids now. So eventually, like, she saw the struggles that I went through my surgical training, again, when I hadn't matched into a residency. And she saw all the nights that I'd be studying, and, when I'd come home from work, I'd study and fall asleep with a book, like, she saw the hard work that went into it. And she realized that eventually all that work came together, and then I matched into a really competitive fellowship. And then even during fellowship, like, we were so broke because I had maxed out the credit cards to do all the interviews and fly around the country, and like, all of that made me feel like, man, I don't belong here, right? Like, we're broke, we're moving across the country, like, what am I doing? I should have just stayed in fellowship in Colorado. But as the work, we made these sacrifices, and then I got here and I'm like working at Grady. I'm like, wow, this is my dream job. This is where I want to stay. And then, I don't get that job initially because there wasn't a position available, but my boss made moves, move people around just to make a position for me to keep me at Grady. That was special, right? Because if he hadn't moved me from Emory VA to Grady, I was probably going to move on and go back to Denver Health. But he made me feel wanted, and again, that added to my wow, like, these people actually want me here, right? They're making changes to keep me here. And it has to do with my hard work and what I had done during my fellowship. And then, after being at Grady for 4 years, now I'm seeing that everyone wants me there, right? And the patients want me there. I'm needed there. And I'm realizing that I'm an integral part of the team at Grady. And when you make that realization, like, I'm not being conceited or ambitious. I'm just, I see it now, right? And people are starting to tell me that. And it's when you start realizing that you realize you're not an imposter anymore. You're actually the person that's doing all the work and making all the sacrifices. And but ultimately it just comes down to your support system and having them back you up. And for me, that's been my wife.
That's a good thing to know. Thank you. And then I'm following up on that because you kind of touched on it. For the people who are, because like you've brought up, medicine is such a very long career that requires a lot of education, a lot of training. I think you even used the word finally a first job. Um, so for people who are on the fence about it because it's so much work and so much time, what advice do you have for them?
I was um I was working on my taxes just recently in the last couple nights, and I part of the taxes includes putting in, how much you've paid in interest for your student loans. And I was like, what? I have almost $300,000 worth of student loans. Like, what? And that's the biggest daunting thing, right? Is all these student loans you have to take out. And I see my monthly student loan payment as my way to be able to do the job I love. Like, it's a payment for me to be able to do what I love. And that's what I see it as. And yeah, physicians get reimbursed well, right? Like, again, I have spent 15 years, doing uh postgraduate education, right? And um that student loan numbers is pretty high, and it's a mortgage that you're paying every month. But I can't see myself doing anything different. And like I said, like, physicians get reimbursed that much because they spend all that money in their education and they have to pay it back. Um, I would not discourage anyone from doing that. I would say that you should obviously make sure that you're willing to make the sacrifices to get all the way to the end, right? You're gonna lose friends that aren't really your friends when you're in medical school because you're not going to go to all those weddings that you're asked to be in, and you're not going to make it to people's birthday parties because you're on call or something. So the friends that are with you when you finish your training are actually your actual friends, and those are the friends you want to have. So you're going to sacrifice not just money, but you're also going to sacrifice friends. And obviously you're not going to see your family as much because you have to dedicate yourself to this career. Um, those are really the tips that I'd have to give. So, you know, the loans are daunting, but don't worry about it because you're going to make the money back, and be ready to make some sacrifices as far as family and friends. If you're willing to do that and you really are passionate about helping people, then it's the thing you should do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then I have one question from someone who wasn't able to attend. So this person is a medical illustrator grad student and she's wondering how she could find opportunities to observe and draw in surgeries and medical procedures just so she could get practice to see if you had an opinion on that.
Yeah, just have her shoot me an email and we can try and get her credentialed, and she's happy to have her observe.
Well, I'll definitely let that person know and she'll be much appreciated.
Yeah. Hi, Nola. You want to say hi? Here's my daughter, Nola. Say hi.
Hi.
You want to tell everyone what you got today?
A gray belt.
She got her gray belt in jiu-jitsu today. So proud of her.
It's great seeing that family that you mentioned and that you're prioritizing now.
Yeah, of course.
Matthias, what is?
I don't know who's is he?
No,
He
he
fell
is.
asleep. Oh,
He
geez.
fell asleep.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. Hi, Dr. Ramos. My name is
I,
Rafael. I just wanted to thank you for your time, and I joined a little bit late, but I think I speak for a lot of us in this video that you truly are a role model for a lot of us, and it's just been great to really get to hear your story and hear have you battled similar battles that we may be battling right now. So thank you again for coming and speaking to us.
Thanks, Rafael. And thanks, Ricardo, for setting this up. I mean, I really am willing to share my story with others. And I mean, everyone has their own story and everyone's had their own struggles to get to where they are, right? Like, uh, I'm not saying that I've had the hardest way here. I know people have had harder routes, but um, we just got to share that, right? And act as role models to each other. And when we make it, we need to share our stories with others, just to say, like, échale ganas and you'll get there, right? Like, ánimo, because it just takes hard work and grit, right? And you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's a fantastic statement. I completely agree. I want to thank you again for joining us. And then this event will be recorded and placed on our website so people could play it back as many times as they want, or if they weren't able to make it. So your story will be shared with the Latino community. Rest in mind.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Thanks, everyone.